Hello, good morning, and welcome to this BSI webinar titled ISO 45001 2018 Explained. Now, with me today on the panel is BSI Tutor Zoe Wu, and Zoe works in the delivery of, amongst other things, ISO 9001, ISO 14001, and BS OHSAS 18001, which is now ISO 45001. She holds a NEBOSH General Certificate and is an 18001 lead auditor. She also has extensive experience in implementing, maintaining, auditing, and improving management systems. Zoe does have a passion as well for rock climbing and snowboarding, which unfortunately is not the most health and safety conscious of sports, but she is willing to give you all of her knowledge and explain a little bit more about ISO 45001 today. I am Robert Lee, and I'm your facilitator for the BSI webinar. So without further ado, I'm now going to hand you over to Zoe.
All right, thank you much, Rob. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our live webinar about ISO 45001 updates. What I'm going to do today is to take you through the needs for international OHSAS standards, and then I'm going to walk you through Annex SL, the high-level structure, which is one of the main changes that's happened to the standards. We're going to cover the key changes and themes, as well as the clauses in more detail of the ISO 45001. And then I'm going to talk to you about the migration assessment structure, both for the new clients and also existing BSI clients, as well as the what kind of support that we offer you as a potential or existing client at BSI. Now, it's worth mentioning that we'll be providing you with a highlight report about this webinar, as well as all question and answer sessions. You'll get a recorded replay of the webinar as well after the session, and then we're going to offer you 10% of our training exclusive for this for the attendees of this webinar. Before I start with the details, I'm going to hand you over to Rob, who's going to run through the first poll that we have for you about the OHSAS 18001 status. Over to you, Rob.
Thank you very much, Zoe. Okay, so let's start with that poll. Okay, the poll is, which one of the following applies to you? And please select one. Let us know if you're certified to BS OHSAS 18001 with BSI. Tell us if you're certified to OHSAS 18001 with another certification body. Let us know if you're not certified to 18001, but you're planning to get ISO 45001. Let us know if you're not certified to OHSAS 18001, but you do currently use the standard. So basically you're a practitioner of 18001 health and safety, but you don't actually have a physical certificate to say that you comply to it. Or indeed none of the above. I'm just going to share the results with you right now. Which of the following applies to you? 73% of you said that you're certified to 18001 with BSI, which is great for us. 7% of you said that you're certified to 18000 with another certification body. 8% said that you're not certified to 18001 and planning to get ISO 45001. And 5% of you said that you're not certified to 18001, but you do currently use the standard. And 7% of you said none of the above. We do have hundreds of people on the line today. So just to let you know that, just to give you some context around the actual numbers, the percentages that you're seeing here today. So I'm just going to close that and pass you back over to Zoe.
So then there's a need for ISO 45001. It's been developed to address the key health and safety challenges that all global organization faces. We here at the UK will be doing hopefully much better than that. However, it's still a concern for lots and lots of organizations across the world. So there's currently no globally recognized standards for the occupational health and safety. Worldwide, there's a need to harmonize the health and safety management systems, and there's a need to drive the provision of safe and healthy working conditions. That is a demand from all organizations. It needs to reflect on the increasingly complex organizational environments, as well as providing a easy integration with other ISO standards that you might have. So those are the key reasons for having ISO 45001. As we probably know, that the development process for 45001 has been long overdue. And that's because there's a lot of things to be considered. They want to incorporate the basic principles of the 18001. They want to address the need to provide a safe and healthy workplace, as well as reflecting on the complex structures, and then think about integrating it with other management systems, and then how to incorporate a higher level structure into the current 18001 structure itself. The areas of contention that has occurred for the delay on the standards, the publication, is because there's lots of discussions in terms of the terms and definitions that's being used in the standards. So I'll talk about it later. What are the key sort of changes or differences between the terms and definitions that's being used in the 18001 as well as 45001? There's a lot of discussions around the level of consultation and participation. As I'm sure you're aware that there's a great emphasis in terms of the consultation participation levels that you have to demonstrate in terms of the ISO 45001. In terms of what needs to be kept as documented information, there's again lots of discussions about whether, where to keep the and record and maintain the key document information, and then how communication has been carried out throughout the organization, where to communicate, when to communicate, how to communicate, etc. There's the implements of the hierarchy of control. So now you have to demonstrate that you've not just considered, but also incorporate the hierarchy of controls into your operational controls, taking into consideration the health and safety risks and opportunities. And then there's a great emphasis on what kind of requirements you have to meet in terms of the products and services that you outsource to other organizations. So those are the key areas of contention, which are actually part of the key changes that's happened to the ISO 45001 as opposed to the 18001. And I'm just going to run through those key changes. So in addition to the previous slides, what are the emerging developments versus 18001? So first of all, it allows strategic occupational health and safety management. So aligning the strategic direction of the organization with the intended outcome of having your ISO 45001. That requires top management to think about the consequences of their business decisions and the impacts of that would have on your occupational health and safety system. That leads to the next key changes, which is on leadership and culture. So top management, as well as any leaders at all levels within the organization, will need to demonstrate their leadership and commitment, as well as driving the culture of providing safe and healthy working conditions throughout the organization. Then you've got risks and opportunities where you need to look into investigate, and not just the occupational health and safety risks, but any other types of risks that could have impact on the intended outcomes of having your ISO 45001. And traditionally, we've been focusing on addressing risks, which is more on the negative impacts, what would happen negatively should this occur, but not necessarily on the opportunity, the positive side. The standards will require you to focus on that. The consultation and participation level of that, there's a whole new clause to address consultation and participation. Again, we'll talk about that when we come to it, as well as a greater emphasis on communication throughout the standards. The documentation and processes that you need to develop, and you need to embed the health and safety practices throughout your business processes and integrate with other business processes. And now there's explicit requirements for the management of change, the outsourcing, and how to manage your contractors as well. With that in mind, we come to our second poll, where we're looking at what would be your greater challenges when it comes to the migration towards ISO 45001. So over to you again, Rob.
Thank you very much, Zoe. Right. So poll number 2, let's talk about migration challenges. What is your biggest challenge for migrating to ISO 45001? Please let us know. Is it time? And this is your biggest challenge, by the way. Is it time? Is it knowledge? Is it your budget? Or is it the organizational culture that's within your business? Here are the results. Those of you who said time, that's 33% of you said time is your biggest challenge. 26% of you said knowledge is. 4%, which is eye-opening, said it's going to be your budget. And 37% of you said it's an organizational culture that is your biggest challenge for migrating to the new health and safety standard. Those are very interesting results, wouldn't you say, Zoe?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, with regards of time, I think it's worth for people to bear in mind that you've got 3 years from the publication of the ISO 45001 to be migrating to the new version of the standards. So there's still lots of time left. However, yeah, considering a lot of the polls are addressing the organizational culture, that might be why you think time is a constraint, depending on what kind of culture you have, or health and safety culture you have at your current organization, which is exactly what the standard is trying to address. So with that in mind, I'm just going to take you through the new standards and the structure of it. So the new standards, the ISO 45001, has adopted the NXSL, as has with the 9001 and 14001. So it is the NXSL Appendix 2 is the template for writing management system standard, I assume probably would have known. So it's been introduced with the mind that it will provide with a unified structure and terminology to make it easier for people with multiple standards to have an integrated management system going forward to address multiple challenges that would emerge in the organization, not necessarily just health and safety, but then how it interlinks with other areas of the business. So it adopts, so what would be the benefit is that it will provide an overall management system framework with common terms and definitions. So even if you don't have the 18,001 or the coming ISO 45001, if you implement it, it will help you to integrate other potential future standards with ease. And if you already have other management system standards such as 9001 and 14001, it will save the time during implementation. So those of you who are concerned with regards of the time that it needed, hopefully, if you have already gone through 9 and 14, which given the deadline was September this year, you would probably be mostly there with your 45001. Just need to slot in the specific elements into your main structure of your management system standards. So it will reduce conflicts, duplication, and misunderstandings for any integrated management system standards. And as you know, the high-level structure has 10 clauses. So clause 1 looks at scope of the standards, what it covers. So for 45,000, it obviously addresses occupational health and safety, and not quality or environment or any other management system standards looking at. Clause 2 makes normative references to other standards that are related to the 45,001. So in this case, there's nothing there. But to bear in mind that there is a supplementary standards, which is ISO 45002, which provide guidelines for implementing ISO 45001, and that's currently in development at the same time to be hopefully to be published in conjunction with the 45001 once it's been published. And then clause 3 looks at terms and definitions, and there's been a lot more terms and definitions that's used in 45,001. So in the 18,001, there's 23 terms and definitions, whereas in 45, there's now 37 terms and definitions. And then from clause 4 all the way to clause 10 is what we call the core clauses. Those are the clauses where it contains all the detailed requirements that your management system will need to meet in order to be certified against 45,001. So clause 4 looks at the context of organization, understanding the environment or your organization operating, setting of the strategy, and how to align that with the intended outcomes of the 45,001. Clause 5 then looks at addressing leadership and workers' participation. So this is where you would notice there's a difference between 9,001 and the 14,001 other management system standards. So with the 45,001, it's more of a mutual understanding of what kind of culture you need to set within the organization, not just top management, but you have to receive what the workers think about it as well. So build a mutual kind of understanding on health and safety culture within your organization. So once you've done that, then it moves on to the planning stage, where you look at identifying the hazards and risks associated with the occupational health and safety, taking into consideration the environment you're operating in and the strategic direction you're trying to achieve. And then also you need to build into that the risks and opportunities that could have impacts on the occupational health and safety from other areas outside of the traditional occupational health and safety kind of hazards areas. Clause 7 that looks at establishing support, allocating resources, determining the document information you need, establishing the competencies of the workers and raise awareness of the people, looking at how do you communicate internally and externally. Whereas clause 8 looks at is operational planning and control. How do you take your planning and support and all the previous clauses and realize it within your organization's practices? And that's where a lot of the, as you are aware, a lot of the non-conformities have been raised previously in the 18,001 as the operation planning and control. And also within clause 8, it will talk about emergency preparedness and response, which is what 18,001 previously would have. Clause 9 then looks at checking on the performances, and then that would be divided into 3 sub clauses, looking at monitoring and measuring, evaluating, and analysis. And then you will look at internal audits as well as management review. And then clause 10 addresses improvements, which is looking at opportunities to improve as well as continual improvements that should occur within your organization, including incident investigation, non-conformities, and corrective actions as well. So most of the clauses are very similar to 9 and 14, the main structure that you would have in place. And I'm just going to show you. So all the red boxes as well as the so on the top we've got blue boxes that are your core clauses, which is the main title. That will be exactly the same across all management system standards. And then within that, the red boxes is something that you should already have with your high-level structure against 9 and 14, where you see the gray boxes are the clauses or sub-clauses that are specific for the 45,001. So on the clause 5, you've got 5.4, consultation and participation of workers. That's specific to 45,001. And then on the 6.1 and 6.2, which is in the next slides, will show you, again, the specific requirements against 45,001. 7 is mainly the same alongside the high-level structure. 8, you've got most of the 8 is specific to 45,001. And then 9, you've got specific requirements, again, to address at 45,001. And then 10, you would have a little bit of it against the 45,001 only, in comparison to the high-level structure unified requirements. So in the next slides, which you'll see, is it's got the sub clauses on the 6.1 and 6.2 that are specific to the 45,001 again. So the hazard identification, the risk assessment process, the identification of other occupational health and safety opportunities, risks and opportunities, and then determination of legal requirements. That sequence is specific to the 45,001 only, as well as assigning the occupational and health and safety objectives, and then plans to achieve those objectives. Some of this will be quite similar to 14,001 if you have it, but again, I'll talk you through the details of each of those clauses in the coming slides to show you the changes to the main structure of the organization. Of the 45,001 against the 18,001. Now, this is the overall model for the 45,001, where you've got in the outside of the box, there's the context of the organization that needs to be determined before you can define the scope of your occupational health and safety management system, which is the box itself. So the dotted lines represent the scope of your management system. And then within the scope, then you establish specific elements of PDCA, plan, do, check, and act. But what's governing that is your leadership and workers' participation. So you cannot have a running system without establishing the foundation, which is a leadership and workers' participation. And from doing that, then you achieve the intended outcomes of the occupational health and safety management system. So before I go to the specific clauses in more detail, we're going to run another poll. So over to Rob, who's going to take you through the potential challenging clauses that you would need to be addressing.
Thank you very much, Zoe. Okay, so now we're going to run into the next poll, which is, which of the following clauses do you find most challenging? And please select one. Let us know if you think planning, clause 4, context, clause 6, planning, and clause 7, resource, is the most challenging. Whether you think it's the do aspect, which is clause 8, which is operation. Let us know if it's the check aspect, which is clause 9 for performance evaluation. Let us know if it's act, which is clause 10, and that is improvement. Or let us know if it's culture, which is clause 5, that has leadership applying to it. So the results are, which of the following clauses do you find the most challenging? 25% of you said the planning aspect, clause 4, context, clause 6, planning, and clause 7, resource. 16% of you said do, and that is clause 8, which is the operation side of things. 14% of you said check, which is clause 9, and that's performance evaluation. 7% of you said the act, which is clause 10, and that's improvement. And 39%, which is the largest percentage ratio by far, say that it's culture. It's clause 5, which is leadership. So those are interesting. When you say, Zoe?
Yeah, I would say so, Rob. However, I would say that it doesn't really surprise me, to be honest, because from the journey that I have with BSI, seeing how clients are managing their 18,000 systems and so on, I would think culture would be the main challenge, which as the poll results have demonstrated. So I'm just going to take you through the clauses in more detail, specifically to what kind of organization clause 5 is about. Really, I was focused more on that. So clause 1, 2, 3 we went through previously in the slides. So just to emphasize on the changes in terms and definitions, as you can see, some on the left-hand side are some different or being revised terms and definitions to 18,001. So the definition for organization has been revised, workplace, that has been revised to cover the places the places under the control of the organization as well. Interested parties, that's been revised to not just considering the people that can affect or be affected by the occupation, the management system or the activities of the organization, but also perceive themselves to be affected by that. So that's a high-level structure definition that applies to all management system standards. So again, if you have 9001 or 14001, you'll be well aware of what's the definition for an organization and what's the definition for interested parties. The occupational health and safety, the definition for that, the management systems policy, what's a policy, what's the objective, that's been revised as well, mainly to align with the definition of the high-level structure. Hazard and risk, that's been revised. Specifically, risk is now on effects of uncertainty, whereas previously risk is the likelihood and severity of a hazard happening. So that's because, again, to line up with the high-level structure. So to address that, they've now defined what's an occupational health and safety risk. But alongside that, you've got occupational opportunities as well. So that's the positive effects, the opportunities to improve you need to be identifying. So again, performance that's been revised was an occupational health and safety performance, incidents, continued improvements, corrective action. It's no longer preventative action now, again, to line up with high-level structure. So preventative action is the action to address a potential risk. So I've taken that from the reactive checking now all the way to the planning stage. So you need to identify the opportunities of improvements or the actions to prevent a risk to happen at the planning stage. What's injury and ill health? That's again been revised. More emphasis has been put on the ill health side of things. So it's not concentrating on injury only, but then looking at the health part, which is what the HSE also have a big drive on at the moment. So what's new to the 45,001 that's not been defined are workers. What are worker? So it's been defined that everybody associated with the management system is now worker, include all levels of management as well. So it's been explicitly defined, everybody should be involved. What's outsourced, what's contractor as well, that's been explicitly defined. Participation and consultation. So now there's subtle differences between what's participation and what's consultation. That would then lead into the level of details of how much you need to involve the workers and what to involve them against making decisions. So participation is the involvement in decision making, whereas consultation then is seek views before you make a decision. So there's a lot of difference in that, and then there's a whole list in 5.4 about what you need to be demonstrating that workers are participated in, and then what you've consulted them in as well. You've got the risks and opportunities, which we covered. There's definition for competence now. There's definition for document information. So that's taking into consideration what's the procedure, what's the records, and so on. So it's now being unified under one definition. There's a process, what's a process, and then what's monitoring measurements. And there's a lot more that's been newly defined in the 45,001. So if you have a copy of standard, I would advise have a look at the clause 3 about, and then compare it side by side to your 18,001 to go through the differences. Clause 4, the context of organization. So you have to undergo and understand what your business do, what's the strategy at the moment, what kind of environments do you operate within, including who you are as an organization, where do you stand in the current business environment, where do you want to go, which is your strategic direction, and then think about how you're going to be utilizing the 45,001 to achieve your strategic direction. So once you've established that, then you can think about, okay, what is going to be my key challenges from outside of the organization as well as within the organization, and then where are who are the key stakeholders or the interested parties that would have an effect or be affected by my business activities and decisions. and all of which then would come together at the same time with the type of product and services you provide to your customers, and then that would then define your scope of your occupational health and safety management system. So that's the journey you undertake to determine what needs to be covered with your 45001 management system standard. So now it never has the need to undertake that journey in the 18001 to decide what is going to be the appropriate scope. And now you have to go through that, and that's where you need to get your top management involved, because only they would know the strategic direction, the purpose of the organization and all that, which would help you to address clause 5 as well once they've gone through that soul searching experience. Once you've decided the scope, then you can look at what kind of management system or the processes you need to establish then to facilitate the management of the occupational health and safety risks. So your scope, your context that you go through this journey to determine your scope will not only serve the purpose of covering the areas that occupational health and safety management needs to cover, but also lead to then the next part where you look at the understanding the risks and opportunities that your management system needs to address. So to do that, then the next clause looks at the leadership and the workers' involvement. So on the 5.1 leadership commitments, most of this would be covered under the 9001 and 14001 high-level structure. A lot of it would be high-level structure. However, there are specific explicit requirements that top management needs to be demonstrating for 45001. So there's more to cover in 45001, which includes making resources available. Again, that would be high-level structure, achieve intended outcomes, ensuring active worker participation, and developing, leading and promoting the positive occupational health and safety culture. That's explicit to 45001. So again, if you have a copy of the standards, have a look on those specific requirements in addition to the high-level structure requirements for the leadership and commitment, and think about how your top management can address that. Then they have to define for the policy and assign roles, responsibilities, accountabilities, and authorities for who's going to be taking care of what and what powers do they have to make decisions. This is where there's explicit requirements for policy and roles, responsibilities, accountability, and authorities being documented, being kept as document information. So this is specific to 45001, which is what happens to the 18001 anyway. Participation and consultation. Now there's a whole load, a new clause addressing participation and consultation, which is different to the 18001. It only comes as a sub clause on the communication, but now it's got its individual clause and it sits within the foundation of the 45001. So when we talk about leadership and how the top management need to be driving the management system standard and not just allocating to somebody else to take care of it, this particular standard requires everybody to get involved and then drive that. So that's where your participation consultation would work. So it's got enhanced requirements, as you can see as a summary with regards to consultation and participation. So it's a list of things you need to consult the workers on, and there's a list of things that they need to be participating on as well. So don't forget, consultation is to seek view before you make a decision. So if in the terms of disputes you have to make an executive decision, then you have to look at what is that we need to consult the workers on, and then you can do that, but you have to justify that you've dispelled, for example, that their views, what's the reason for that. Whereas participation, if there's a dispute of you and between you and the organization, the top management's view on what needs to be achieved and the workers' view, then you have to reach agreements before you can proceed further. So this is the key clause that you need to address for the 45001. Again, is to establish that culture of health and safety, and it's not somebody else's job to take care of my own health and safety. That's what the standard is striving for. So then that leads us to the planning clause, where you look at actions to address risk and opportunities. So that's your hazard identification, risk assessment, determination of legal requirements, and so on. So that's been kept in there. But what's more here is, where do you see risks and opportunities arise from other areas, from understanding the context of the organization that could have an impact on you. So traditionally, risks and opportunities might have focused on operational level risks and opportunities only, but now you have to look wider into the business structure itself and how that would have impact on you. So if your top management has made a decision, for example, to cut the workforce and things like that, and then what would that have on not just the processes, but also people's occupational and health and safety as well. So think about that. And then from there, you can then assign the objectives and targets, and then plans to achieve them as well. So you have to establish occupational health and safety objectives at different levels, and then have a specific plan to achieve them, including what will be done by who, when, and how, with what resources, and what happens if you don't achieve it. Your objectives and plans are required to be kept as document information again. So that's an explicit requirement. So in terms of resources, if you think about determining and provide necessary resources for the management system, you have to look at how to train people. So competence, what kind of competence they would need, and there's explicit requirements includes, when you train people, you have to make sure that they have the ability to identify the hazards as well. So it needs to be explicit to what they do, what kind of hazards they're exposed to, and so on. You have to develop the awareness. So again, in 18,001, it used to be competence, training, and awareness all under one clause. Now it's been split into two clauses to align with the high-level structure. And there's greater emphasis on what kind of awareness you need to establish within your organization or your management system. And then 7.4 looks at information and how to communicate internally and externally. And then 7.5 looks at establishing the document information to facilitate your management system. It is worth noting that resource competence awareness and information and communication not just refraining within your organization, but also need to take account of anybody who works under your control as well. Clause 8 looks at operation, planning, and control. So that's your general operational planning and control. How do you control the activities as it happens out there? That includes applying of the hierarchy of control hierarchy. So not just considering, as it currently requires at the 18,001, but how do you apply the hierarchy of control? How do you manage change as it happens? Any pre-planned change or unforeseeable change? And then it's got a whole clause on procurement and supply chain management, basically. How do you select your contractors? How do you outsource? And what kind of activities you outsource? How do you control that? And then you've got emergency preparedness and response, which is very similar to what it is at the 18,001. So the emphasis here is on the management for change, the procurement, the management of contractors, as well as outsourcing. So if you're weak on that in your 18,001, this is where you need to focus your resources to address. 9.1. Establishing monitoring, measurement, analysis, and evaluation, as well as the internal audit and management review. Not much have changed against the 18,001, so it's got still the basic requirements. And then same regards with the improvements. So most of the changes has happened towards the beginning of the standard, which is similar to the 9 and the 14 as well. So with that in mind, we've come to our fourth poll, which is to look at migration planning. So I'm going to hand you over to Rob again.
Thank you very much, Zoe. Okay, so your next poll is When do you plan to implement ISO 45001? So let us know if you want to do it as soon as possible. Tell us if you want to do it in the first half of 2018, this year, or the second half of the year, or let us know if you want to do it next year, or if you're not sure as yet. So the number of you who've said that you wanted to implement the new health and safety management system standard is 19% for as soon as possible, 8% at the beginning of this year, the first half of this year, 20% of you said in the latter part of the year, 25% or a quarter of you said that you are going to do it from 2019 onwards, and almost 30% of you said that you're not quite sure when you're going to do it. So there's some good results there, Zoe.
Yeah, with that in mind, I'm just going to talk you through the migration assessment process with BSI for existing and potential new clients. So what's going to happen with the 45,000 migration from existing 18,000 clients is that you've got three options basically. So option one is that you can undertake a special audit, which is a one-off assessment. That would include to plan an additional visit time to be added on top of your current surveillance audits. So you do it one-off, but if you've got multiple sites, you have to take that into consideration because they must be sampled accordingly before we can certify you with the 45,001. So there's additional time would be required for option one. Option two, you can do it progressively, so you can gradually migrate towards the 45,001, so you can do it bit by bit, basically. What's the benefit of this is that it allows you to be certified against the 18,000 ones. You can maintain your 18,000 certificates whilst gradually sort of migrate against the ISO 45001. However, that would also still includes an additional visit time to be added to the current surveillance visits. So it's a minimum of 1 day, and then the maximum days or the exact time would then depend on the complexity of the organization and then what needs to be covered and so on. So that needs to be calculated. Option three is that you can do it through recertification. However, so this is an option that's being offered from IAF, so the International Accreditation Forum, that drives all accreditation bodies and it drives all the certification bodies. So you can only do it if you don't do it via strategic review. This option is not going to be applicable to majority of our UK clients because most of us are recertified via strategic review. So that leaves you with option one and option two specifically. So you can do it one-off or you can do it progressively. So the exact time then all depending on the circumstances itself. So talk to your client managers if you're not sure which one to go for. But this is the options that we offer at the BSI. For new clients, the route to migrate, if you are already certified by our esteemed competitors, you can think about, and you're thinking about joining us, you will need to go through our transfer process before you can proceed to the migration process. So you need to discuss this with your BSI contacts for more details. And if you're new to BSI or you're new to the 45,001 or the 18,001, then you go through that via the normal certification stage 1 and stage 2. So there's a route for everyone. So again, talk to your contacts to establish which one is for you. We do offer you with lots of support at BSI. So your journey will start by buying the standards to understand the explicit requirements. Book your training if you still have doubts. Implement the changes, the differences, and then look for additional support services. The FDIS has just been published in December 2017, and the ISO standards will be published at the moment in March 2018, so it's coming. It's available at BSI Shop from your national standard body, so it's there for you to have a look. With your training, we currently offer migration training, so that's a 1-day course to go through bit by bit, so all the nitty-gritty details within the sub clauses that we looked at. Implementing the change, that's a 2-day course incorporating the migration change. So day 1, we go through the differences. Day 2, we look at how to implement the changes. And then we've got the 2-day auditor migration course. Again, 1 day will be focusing on the differences, and then the second day will be auditing how to address the differences from the auditor's perspective of view. With most of you concerned about your culture, we do offer senior management briefings where, again, our tutors would come into the organization targeted for top management to go through the key clauses that they need to be addressing from the top, offer them with the support to take them through the processes that they need to get involved in, and the details of how to get through those processes, what results to be achieved. And then once the ISO standard has been published, we have in the pipeline that we're going to bringing out the 1-day requirements course to address the basic requirements of ISO 45001. We've got the 2-day implementation course, and then the 2-day internal auditor course, as well as a 5-day lead auditor course, which most of you probably are familiar with, are our standard courses that we do for all management system standards. What we are bringing out is the lead implementation course, where you look at to go advanced on the implementation, and then how to facilitate effective management system requirements within your organization. So those are the range of courses that we offer at BSI. To implement, you should think about start your migration preparation early. Use our support material. It is all available on BSI websites. We're going to be bringing out a self-assessment gap analysis tool, so you can check yourself against the new requirements of the 45001 as well. And all the best is to the best way to do it is actually to talk to your BSI contacts, speak to your client managers, voice your concerns. They'll be able to help you or point you to the right direction. The service that we have at BSI to support you is we offer gap analysis service to help you save the time for you to go through everything by yourself. We've got also business improvement software, which could be useful to migrate to 45001 to line up with other management system standards and managing your documents within your new management system standards.
Now, the live Q&A. Now let's take a look at all of the questions that you've been submitting over the course of this webinar, as well as any that you've submitted previously. So we do have a couple of varied questions here. I guess the first one, Zoe, is to ask you, when is the actual release date going to be of ISO 45001?
The ISO 45001 at the moment is scheduled to be released in March 2018. So keep that on your diary, I would say. Okay,
that then now leads us into when can we get a copy of the new standard?
The new standards would come out again as soon as it's ready. So at the moment, we're looking at April time.
Okay, that's great. Now, the next question is, what are going to be the biggest changes in working practices that might be needed in moving from 18001 to the new standard?
I would say the biggest change in working practices would be how to demonstrate and evidence that there is a proactive and positive health and safety culture within your organization, how everybody, not just the top management, not just the front workers, own up to the health and safety elements that are specific to them. That would be the challenge.
Okay, so we've got a question here about when will the lead auditor course be finalized and available, the BS 45001 lead auditor course. When is it going to be ready so that I can book on it? I'm guessing, though, that probably wouldn't be ready until the standard is released, right?
Yeah, so what's going to happen is that once the ISO 45001 has been finalized and published, then we'll be introducing a lead auditor course. So you're looking at June, July time.
Is there anything that's going to be available before then for anyone who is perhaps looking at maybe trying to find out some information about the FDIS perhaps, or anything like that?
Against the FDIS, we don't currently offer the lead auditor course. However, we offer the auditor migration course to take you through from the previous auditing against the 18,001 and into the 45,001 key requirements, because the FDIS is very similar to the final version of the ISO standards. So we do offer that option at the moment.
Okay, that's great. When can, sorry, we've got another question, which is how can improved leadership be evidence? How can we prove that we've got improved leadership?
I would say you will need to first of all, brief your senior management or top management about what's coming and where the involvement needs to be, how then they need to be able to demonstrate they meet all the requirements of the 5.1 and or other places. So again, bear in mind that we have the senior management briefing that would address that exact question that you would have. So think about that as well.
Okay, I've just been notified that we're doing a little bit of a giveaway right now in terms of the 10% off any of the ISO 45000 training courses that we are running. So just to let you know that we are going to contact you shortly about that with all of the information about it. So as an attendee of today's webinar, you are eligible to receive a 10% discount on any of the ISO 45000 courses that we're running. Okay, so moving on to the next question that we had submitted. This one is about, will BSI, will we inspect on the new standard at our annual audit? And I'm guessing they're asking about whether we will inspect against the new standard at their annual audit. Zoe?
No, I guess that would depend on the circumstances. If you're giving us the heads to go through that you want to be certified against the new standards, then we'll be assessing you against the new standard. If you haven't done that, then we will be still assessing you against the 18,001. But you should think about the migration process, how long it would take, and then again either to schedule a one-off audits or the progressive audits to build into your current surveillance visits.
Okay, so our next question is, we've got 18,001 and we've transitioned to 9,001 and ISO 14,001 with BSI. Should all the new requirements of 45,001 largely have already been met? And I'm guessing that they're probably asking about it from the relationship with the Annex SL aspect of it.
As I'm sure you would have seen from the slides I've showed you, yes, the main elements of the high-level structure is probably there, which is great. Means that you have a existing framework to follow and just build on into the framework health and safety specific elements. However, there's still some bits and bats that weren't there before. In particular, 5.4, the participation and consultation, and so on. So it really depends where you are with your current health and safety management system, and then with your 9,001 and 14,001, the maturity of the new system against the 2015 standards requirements.
Thank you very much, Zoe. Next question is about. The question is, what do I need to transition between OHSAS 18,001 and 45,001? It's almost a double question. What are the key differences between the two standards, and what are my first steps?
Right. The key requirements are strategic alignment of the occupational health and safety management system with your business processes and purposes. And you've got also the leadership and culture you have to demonstrate. You have to address not only risks, but looking at opportunities and plans, actions to address the opportunities. And then there's the consultation and participation, the explicit requirements on more communication up and down the organization, so not just one way, but two-way process. And then there's the management of your supply chain, the procurement, the outsourcing as well. So those are the key changes.
The next question is about what should someone do right now? Should I wait to implement ISO 45,001, or should I just implement OHSAS 18,001 and then convert?
I guess that would all depend on how ready you are against the new requirements. If you think you've got a good culture and you're more or less there, then we'll say, yeah, think about certify against the ISO 45001. Because all the elements contained within 18001 would have been incorporated within the 45001. However, if you're not there, or you think there's a still greater gap, then think about the 18001 and then think about taking it gradually, because even though 18001 is not as advanced as 45001, it's still a mature system to address the occupational health and safety risks and how to manage those to mitigate the negative impact to your organization. So it's still worth having that in place.
So we got a question which is coming about the terminology that we used just now in terms of FDIS. Can you let the audience know just what FDIS actually means in terms of a standard?
So FDIS means the final draft to the international standards. So that's the in the standards development process, they've got a few drafts. So 45001, it has gone through the first draft, the second draft, and the final draft. So once the final draft have been published, what happens is that it's open for voting, not for changes. So the previous drafts, the DIS 1, DIS 2, the draft international standards would have been opened for comments and amendments. But final draft is, once it's published, is very similar, if not word by word, to the final ISO standards. So you can actually work towards the FDIS rather than wait for the ISO 45001, the final version, to be published.
We've got a question which has come in about will there be a readiness review document available to help conduct a gap analysis like ISO 9001? Now, over to you, Zoe.
That's a great question. So what's going to happen with the 45001 migration is that there's not going to be a readiness review process as 9001 and 14001 has come that has gone through. Your options are the two options I've talked about in the previous slides. So you can either go for one-off or progressive audits, but we're not going to take you through the readiness review process again. There's going to be a self-assessment document to help you identify the potential gaps, but that's not going to be used as part of the readiness review because that's not a process we're going to be applying for the migration of the 45001 at BSI.
We have a question about the supporting materials and gap analysis tools and so on. And the question is, where can we get this from? Do you know at the minute, Zoe?
You will be able to get them from your client managers or via BSI website. So again, talk to your BSI contact about those tools and documentation. You can also come to your implementation courses, which will provide you with extensive tools and information to support you to implement the changes.
Okay, we have a question about a copy of the FDIS itself. Is that already available from the BSI shop? I would imagine it is. Is it available right now?
Yes, definitely. You can purchase that from the BSI shop at the moment.
First of all, personally, I'd like to thank you very much, Zoe, for coming in today and helping to shed some light on the new 45001 standard and all of the details about transitioning over to it as well. It's been most helpful, I'm sure, for a lot of people out there who currently have got the system in place or are looking to put that management system in place or thinking about transitioning perhaps from another provider at the minute. So before we go, I'd just like to also thank you, the audience, today for joining us, and we certainly hope that you've enjoyed the webinar. So with that, I'd just like to say thank you very much, everyone, and goodbye.